I'm done lending my jet to Meghan and Harry. Never again. Last time left me utterly shaken after that crash landing. They completely overloaded the engine. And Meghan still got my car from her little PR jaunt in 2021. Hasn't bothered returning.
It ended with 2 words that left no room for negotiation. Never again. Not whispered. Not leaked anonymously. Said outright by Elton John himself. For years, Elton was one of Harry and Meghan's most powerful protectors. A global icon. A man whose loyalty to Princess Diana's legacy ran so deep that he was willing to shield her son at any cost. But according to those closest to him, that loyalty finally snapped after one terrifying moment in the sky. And a pattern of behavior he says he could no longer ignore. What followed wasn't just a falling out. It was a total cutoff. And it all began with a private jet that nearly didn't make it back to the ground. "I'm done lending my jet to Meghan and Harry," Elton reportedly said. "Never again. Last time left me utterly shaken after that crash landing. They completely overloaded the engine. And Meghan still has my car from her little PR jaunt in 2021. Hasn't bothered returning it yet." These were not the words of a distant acquaintance. They came from a man who once bent over backward to protect the Sussexes from criticism, scrutiny, and consequence. A man who performed at their wedding, hosted them at his estates, defended them publicly, and funded their private travel under the banner of safety and loyalty. But patience, even legendary patience, has limits. For years, the public believed this alliance was unbreakable, rooted in shared grief over Diana's death and mutual admiration. Elton was seen as a guardian figure, offering Harry refuge from the very press intrusion that had destroyed his mother. Behind the scenes, however, sources say resentment was building. The jet incident wasn't a one-off mechanical failure. According to insiders, it was the breaking point in a long pattern of overuse, entitlement, and disregard. Elton reportedly felt exploited. His generosity transformed into what one source called a free airline for the Sussexes' non-stop global movement. And then there was the car. A £119,000 Range Rover autobiography, loaned to Meghan in 2021 for what was supposed to be a short California PR appearance. Years later, sources claim the vehicle is still sitting in their Montecito garage, while Elton continues paying insurance and maintenance from thousands of miles away. This wasn't gossip. It was the unraveling of a carefully curated image. Elton's frustration peeled back layers that had long protected Harry and Meghan from serious scrutiny. The story shifted from benevolent support to something far less flattering, a pattern of taking, overextending favors, and leaving others to absorb the cost. To understand how it reached this point, you have to return to February 2022. Picture this. 10,000 feet above the ground, violent winds battering a multi-million-dollar Bombardier Global Express and a hydraulic system suddenly failing mid-flight. Elton John was en route to a high-stakes concert in New York when his jet, suffered catastrophic steering failure. What should have been a routine transatlantic journey turned into a life-or-death emergency. The pilot, battling extreme turbulence, had no choice but to declare an emergency and attempt a return landing at Farnborough Airport. Eyewitnesses on the ground described a terrifying scene, the aircraft descending too steeply, aborting one landing attempt, lifting back into the air, then failing again before finally touching down on a third attempt. Elton emerged shaken, visibly distressed, but determined. He immediately booked another flight and still made it to a show. The performance went on, but something inside him changed. Because what the public didn't know then, what insiders now allege, is that the jet had been pushed far beyond normal use. According to multiple sources, Harry and Meghan had been borrowing the aircraft relentlessly. Flights to vacations. Flights to events. Flights to escape media attention. At one point, insiders claim the jet was being used up to 6 days a week, more frequently for the Sussexes than for Elton's own tours. Aviation experts are clear, hydraulic failures don't happen randomly. They result from relentless demand, overloaded schedules, and accelerated wear on critical systems. Maintenance logs reportedly showed the aircraft clocking excessive hours tied directly to Sussex travel. Elton's shock after the landing wasn't just physical. It was emotional. The realization that his kindness, offered out of loyalty to Diana's son, may have nearly cost him his life. That wasn't a favor anymore, one insider reportedly said. That was exploitation. Flying 6 days a week isn't borrowing. It's commandeering. As Elton reviewed maintenance reports, the conclusion became unavoidable. The malfunction was not an accident. It was the predictable outcome of overuse. And that was the moment never again became permanent. The jet was only part of the story. For years, Harry and Meghan have positioned themselves as environmental advocates, speaking passionately about climate change while urging the public to reduce their carbon footprint. Yet critics have long pointed to the contradiction between those speeches and the couple's private jet lifestyle. Elton initially defended them. In 2019, after backlash over their private flights, he publicly stated he had paid for the trips himself and ensured carbon offsets were applied, framing his actions as protection and alignment with Harry's environmental values. But offsets don't erase reality. A single transatlantic private jet flight can emit nearly 60 tons of CO2, roughly 15 times the annual per-person limit set by the Paris Agreement. And records show the Sussexes taking multiple such trips in short timeframes, including 4 private flights in just 11 days during the infamous Ibiza period. Royal experts didn't mince words. They tell people to protect the environment, said Tom Quinn, and then they don't protect the environment themselves. It's enormously hypocritical. Even after losing access to Elton's jet, the criticism didn't stop. The couple continued borrowing private aircraft from other wealthy allies, drawing renewed accusations of virtue signaling without sacrifice. For Elton, the hypocrisy became personal. He no longer wanted his name attached to what he saw as a facade. And then there was the Range Rover. Sources say Meghan borrowed Elton's personal vehicle during the Sussexes' early Montecito days, when royal fleet access was gone and finances were tightening. What was meant to be temporary turned into years. Security staff were reportedly seen refueling the vehicle long after it should have been returned. Elton was not amused. This wasn't a gift, one insider emphasized. It was a loan. The unreturned car became symbolic of generosity taken for granted, of boundaries ignored. And it fed into a larger, increasingly uncomfortable conversation about money. Before marrying Harry, Meghan's estimated net worth hovered between $2 and $5 million, with acting roles reportedly topping out around $200,000 per project. Post-Megxit, the couple purchased a $14 million Montecito mansion, one that consumes enormous resources through taxes, maintenance, staff, security, landscaping, and insurance. Add escalating wardrobe expenses, reported childcare costs, staff salaries, and projects that failed to deliver expected returns, like the cancelled Netflix series Pearl, and the picture grows murkier. Despite headlines about lucrative deals, insiders suggest cash flow has been far tighter than publicly acknowledged. Borrowing assets, jets, cars, began to look less like luxury and more like necessity. To Elton, that dependency crossed a line. His cutoff wasn't impulsive. It was cumulative. The jet scare, the environmental contradictions, the unreturned car, and, according to whispers, private remarks and behavior that left him feeling mocked and used. By 2023, the break was visible. Harry and Meghan were conspicuously absent from Elton's legendary Oscars viewing party, a social signal in Hollywood that speaks louder than any statement. Sources say contact was severed completely. Some insiders point to tensions described in Harry's memoir Spare, including a reported disagreement with Elton over music at a holiday gathering, an early crack in what had once seemed like a parental bond. Others suggest Elton learned of unflattering private conversations through mutual acquaintances, cementing his decision to walk away. Whatever the final trigger, the result was decisive. No more favors. No more protection. No more access. For a man who once saw it as his duty to protect Diana's son, that decision carried enormous weight. and its implications extend far beyond one friendship. If Elton John, bound by history, loyalty, and personal promises, has turned away, what does that say about the Sussexes standing in elite circles? Hollywood has a way of following precedent. When one powerful ally steps back, others often reassess. The monarchy already distanced itself. Now, celebrity allies appear to be doing the same. From overloaded jet engines to unreturned loans, this saga exposes a deeper truth. Independence built on dependency eventually collapses. Advocacy without accountability rings hollow. And generosity, when abused, turns into exposure. As of now, there have been no denials from Montecito. Just silence. Strategic silence. But Elton's message is unmistakable. True friendships survive stress, but exploitation ends them. And in this remix of royalty, celebrity, and consequence, the music has stopped, leaving only echoes of what once was and questions about who will still be standing when the last favor is gone.